recording. Okay, we're good to go.
Sorry.
Okay. Good evening. I want to call to session the board work session number 3 for our proposed budget. This is a full board meeting to address capital facilities and debt service. I'm not sure if Gina, can you hear me?
Janice right here.
Oh, Gina's right here. I didn't see her. Well, in that case, thank you. Ms. Cannon, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, absolutely. Ms. Higgins,
Here.
Ms. West,
Here.
Mr. Weinberg.
Here.
Ms. Steph.
Here.
Ms. Easton.
Here.
Ms. Welch. Carol, thank you. Brain grant. Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker, are you here?
Here, yes, I'm here.
Mr. Richards,
Here.
and I am here.
All right, so we have the full board. I will apologize to anyone at home if we have limited video. We have some technical restrictions, but you should be able to see the entire presentation. So with that, I will pass it off to the superintendent or Mr. Dunn, whoever would like to start us off. Mr.
Okay.
Dunn.
I'll get started.
Thank you.
So again, this presentation is in their Google Drive, in your 22 budget folder. The agenda for tonight is just an overview of the facilities. Look at the operating budget plans for this summer. We're going to explain the debt service and how we go about the building of the trust fund. A future discussion as it relates to Runlet, where the public information is, and then future work sessions. Can you hear me down there okay?
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. Do me a favor, go hit that max, just zing it just a little bit. It's a little sensitive.
Watch your ears.
Yeah. Blame it on Matt. All right, is that better? Do me a favor, there's also a little red band, see all the little tape things? Take the red mic and see if you can juice it a little. Okay.
That was something else. Here's that.
Just the list.
Where is the speaker?
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's
Yeah, bring it down a little bit.
There they are, right
Yeah,
between.
because I can hear it echoing a little. Yeah.
How you guys doing
All
now?
right, is that better? That's all for you, Jonathan.
Jack is not moving, so can we do that like every 5
All right,
minutes?
let's see how we do. All right.
Keep going. Thank you, Matthew.
All right. So these are the main facilities that we have for schools. The buildings that aren't shown is the SAU and 6 other support buildings that we have. White Farm, which is off of Clinton Street, the Stable Building, which is in the parking lot of the high school. Curtisville Road, the maintenance shed, the Common Operations Maintenance Facility, which is leased from the city. That's up North State Street, a little past the prison. And Eastman School, which is currently rented to Boys and Girls Club and has for the last several years. In total, that we manage, we have almost 1.1 million square feet or 177 acres, 14 buildings. The budget to manage these buildings for this year, the request is a little over $11.3 million. And that is down almost $1 million. This budget includes the facilities director, the admin assistant to the director, 5 maintenance staff, and 39 custodial staff. It has service contracts, life safety, security contracts, summer projects, the utilities, general supplies, equipment, and the debt service. The one thing as part of this savings that you'll see is we would also get money back for what they call the Build America bonds. And that was eliminated when we refunded. So the increase in supplies, a little over $6,000, proposing a decrease in electricity and oil. The property and liability insurance went up. The increase in construction services, which is what we call the summer projects, and we'll have a slide on that. But I do want to note that that increase is offset by the withdrawal from the school building maintenance fund. And then a decrease in principal debt and a decrease in interest debt. So not bad for the decrease, but again, that's that debt that saved us this year from that refunding. Also in here, there is a transfer of 1.4 million into your facilities and renovation trust fund. And we'll elaborate that when we talk about debt service. So what we try to do when we build out the various budgets, whether it's for operating or the summer projects budget, or when we decide to go to bond, we try to break them up into 3 different categories. And depending on the severity will depend on where they fall into. So as you look at the first column, when we talk about school year operating budget, that is the variety of different things that happen that we budget for, expected and unexpected. And that ranges a wide range of things that happen just year to year, day to day. And that's what we have in the operating budget. For summer projects, these are things that might start ripping things apart, might take some time to get done, and we save those for the summer. So I'll kind of go across the gym floor as an example. So when any gym floor repairs, you can usually isolate any of the repairs or section. When you get into a refinish and you got to keep kids off the floors, that's usually about a week. So we can't shut the gymnasiums down for a week during the school year. So that's a summer project. As we move over to a bond, that's where we get into significant dollars, and they're usually items that are at least 10 years or more before we get into looking to borrow and that have significant dollars. So for example, taking the gym floor example, notice it says gym floor strip. That we're very thin at the high school as far as being able to resurface that floor. So if we have to tear it up and re-wood that, I want to say it's $300,000 to do that.
Yep.
Likely not something that we would put in the operating budget. It could fit it, but we would probably start to look at a number of projects to bond and borrow to do that because that's a significant project. Any questions here? You can always come back if you think of anything. So that just gives you the overview. Now we'll go through each of those pieces. As far as the operating budget, this is the overall budget for year to year by object, salaries, the benefits, all the way through. And as we said, mostly what the increase is going to be in salary and benefits. The purchase property, which is where the construction services are. That's where we talked about summer projects, that 290,000 more that we're looking to spend, again, is offset by pulling out of the school building maintenance fund. This increase is solely because of the property and liability insurance, small change in the utilities, books and supplies. We've tried to just keep everything flat or go lower. And equipment is any equipment that we might need year to year.
Jack,
Yeah, sorry.
for the purchase property,
Yeah.
what is the new property that was purchased?
No, it's just the way they code it in the 1999 financial manual from the state. That's just the overall term. But that's
Okay.
where we would like rent buildings, like the comp lease would be not in their budgets in transportation, but when we rent stuff, that would be in there. Our property and liability, that is under there. It's just the way they code it, and that's what they call it. So, and it's kind of a misnomer as far as buying property.
Why such a significant increase in our property and liability insurance? Are there issues or?
Claims? Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to, well, last year, right, we had the sprinkler head last year, because it's all in arrear, so it's
Right.
dictated this year.
We had a heating line go in the gymnasium, so that really damaged the high school floors, and so we had to sand them down, restripe them as a, so those types of claims.
And I'm trying to think any other things, because the auto, that's under transportation, that's a separate,
Yeah.
but for property and liability, and then just the overall, as the properties age, that also increases as well. You probably see that in your homeowners going up as your home gets older. Very similar. We also did purchase some new equipment last year's budget. So that, like I have a plow truck, that's $98,000. You have the John Deere backhoe that was purchased. So new equipment, the old equipment comes off, the newer comes on. It's a little bit more to insure, similar to when you go buy a new car. You know, it's not the same price as a 10-year-old vehicle, but you know, so that affects it. So in each of these objects, we just break out a little bit of detail. Again, there's salary and benefits, which you just saw on the screen prior, and what those increases are. Again, the significant increase when you look at the budget and the benefits is New Hampshire retirement. As we said, with purchase services, that's all also we call contracted services. You have your HVA contracts, the pest control, fire alarm, sprinkler service, elevator maintenance, annual fire service extinguisher. A lot of fixed costs in here for agreements that are required under the law or we need it to maintain the buildings. Again, purchase property. This is kind of what we call repairs and maintenance as well. Going back to what you were asking, Jonathan, there's some service agreement for materials, to any capital leases that we may have. And again, the only one that we lease that's physical property is the COM. And this is also where the summer projects reside. Again, that increases $209,000, but again, we're withdrawing $290,000 from the school building maintenance fund to offset where that increase was. And then you have purchased services, property and liability, cell phones, conference and travel. And again, that's the only increase there is the property and liability. We look at the supplies, books, and utilities. Most of that is everything to keep the supplies in there, paper towels, cleaning materials, drywall, paint, plumbing, and then obviously you have the utilities, electrical, natural gas, water, sewer, oil, gasoline. Floor equipment, we're budgeting $67,000 for the floor machines and vacuums, with a variety of equipment throughout. Dues and fees, which is where the bond interest is, and a contingency. The contingency for maintenance is $65,000, and that's what's used to manage 1.1 million square feet. Yeah, divide 1.1 million into 65,000.
Yeah.
That's what you got per square foot. So under the bond principal and transfers, again, this is to pay for the principal of the debt, and that's where we put the transfer into the facilities and renovation trust fund. And then for summer projects, we're going to see a slide shortly on that. Again, the budget is $540,000. Last year we budgeted $250,000. Again, this reflects that decrease of about 1.1 million. But one other thing we want to note, I'm going to move over to this side just in case the feedback is coming because of me.
I think it's coming because of me. I'm sitting between these two speakers,
Yeah.
and I think that's why it's sending that. Because when I cover my speaker,
Okay.
it
It
stops.
stops.
Yeah,
Take the
No, I'm
yellow
okay.
one and lower it.
Yeah,
and then it's
he
able to
did.
deal
I
with
think
it.
we're okay now.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All
Sorry.
right. So one other thing I want to note, and for those that were on the board in October, if you remember me mentioning with the whole COVID thing, I had anticipated that we would likely see an increase in electrical and natural gas. Because of the fact under the CDC guidelines with the HVAC, we're running everything full bore 24 hours a day. So Just a little note, right now, I'm at 330,000 over budget between those two lines. So I'm not proposing we do anything about it tonight. We're gonna see how things shake out over the next couple months. This is just a projection on how we're running, but not shocked by it. As I mentioned in October, when we finalized the budget, we may have to deal with it. Did not want to chase it because as this COVID money all starts to shake out, can we contribute over and above what that's contributed to? Sure. Am I going to look to try to offset some of that expense with that money? Sure. Because I could probably go back to our coldest year and equate it all out and say, this is definitely due because of this. So I'm not worried about it on that end, but I think you just should be aware. It's something that we're well aware of. Okay. For summer projects, this is a history of what we've spent on that 1.1 million square feet and various vehicles, maintenance vehicles that we have over the last, or I should say on the buildings, for the last, since 2011. Again, you see what we have proposed for this year of 540. And again, we look to take 290 out of that fund to mitigate it, bringing it back to 250, which is typically about what we've been trying to budget for the last few years. And then the list of those projects are right here. And Matt can speak to those if you have questions, but this is what is being proposed. The items with the star are what we're using the maintenance fund to offset. So Runlet card access, that is the only building that does not have any badge access or cameras in it. It does have a push button access, so it's not as if they don't lock and you get pressed in. But the only way to get in is through a key or somebody buzzing you in. We would look to put a card system similar to the other schools that swipes and opens the door. And then put a limited number of cameras. It probably would not be the same that we have at the other facilities. And then the ones without the asterisk are money we would use this summer to clean up the buildings. I also want to note, you may see other work going on. So I don't remember a discussion about replacing the high school foyer area, that's a mess. But that was all approved last June and July. So members that were on the board remember we had $1 million in savings from the steam to gas.
Right.
And we reprioritized that money. Obviously, because of COVID, it's been difficult trying to get contractors there, or the school was used pretty actively in the summer for summer school. So there's that balance of trying to get that work done and trying to still operate. So it's our hope that we'll try to finish up those projects this summer. Okay.
Matt, can you say, did you tell us on the tour of Runlet that those cameras would likely be able to be transferred
They would definitely would.
to a new building?
What we have in the district is called the Cantech system, and that's the whole system with the card readers and the cameras. So this is just getting some form of increased safety and peace of mind and ease to get in and out and have some sort of control. So whatever we put in here is compatible with what we have in all of our schools.
Okay. And the roof patching, and that's just necessary to get us through until.
Yeah, in the area of the 400 wing, 500, the hallway outside the cafeteria, library, media center, that's it's well over 30 years, and it's in pretty rough shape. So there, instead of doing a full roof replacement, which would be fairly costly, I really want to dissect that roof out and see what sort of a short-term patch, just to keep the water out, would do for us. So I feel confident that we can accomplish plugging the leaks, to get us through till we decide what we're going to do in the future with Runlet.
Jonathan, you can go.
So you can go ahead first.
I assume there are cost savings projected with the LED conversions. Can you talk about
I sure
that?
can. Yep. It's just under a 3-year payback. So before we engage in this, we did it with Liberty Utility, or Unitil rather. And so we show 3 years worth of billing per school. And so far, we've got all the elementaries except for Broken Ground complete with a full LED replacement. So they all come out to be just under 3 year for a payback. The lifespan on those LEDs, anywhere from 18 to 20 years. And one of the nice things about it as well is not the labor costs that you would have on your regular fluorescent tubes or standard lighting where, they start to flicker. We've got to get a ladder, get somebody up there, replace them, buy bulbs. And then those fluorescent, they cost money to get rid of now because it's got hazardous material in it. So my goal ultimately is to get every school in the district. We pecked away at it. We got the LEDs around the outside of this room and the Dewey room. But yeah, I'd like to continue that.
Matt, do you have specific numbers for like exactly how much we're saving?
I do, not with me tonight, but what we can do is Unitil did a very comprehensive spreadsheet. So we can share that with you and you can see our usage. I right down to the bulbs. I know at Broken Ground, we have just under 1,971 bulbs that would be replaced. But we can provide that. Yep.
Thank you.
Matt, does that include any rebates or anything that's available grant-wise for us because we will be saving electricity? Is that already factored in there? Or
The
is that a
rebate number
possible?
is factored into that. It was
Okay.
about 110,000, I think, for total project cost.
Mhm.
Our cost would be 55.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, I took
Yeah.
the
It's
numbers.
52, it's in that
Yeah.
200
Sorry,
number.
I was looking at the number above and I should have been.
Yeah, the work,
Okay.
the work,
So this would be higher and we're getting a rebate with regards
Yes.
to equipment from them. All right,
Yes.
thank you.
And we've done this too, just to remind the board, we did this with Beaver Meadow 2 years ago, and this past summer, we did the 3 newer elementaries. So this would complete it for us.
and typically the way it's worked is we pay them our portion and then
Mhm.
Unitil pays the vendor their portion. So
Okay.
it's not us putting it out and then waiting for a rebate from anybody. We just jointly, we communicate, the project's done, Matt signs off on that they've completed everything, and then I sign the financial, and we release a check to pay.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
a-
I knew
it's a-
that they,
it's a
I knew that
project,
they
right?
would contribute on
Right.
public projects and on different projects. That saved the money. I just want to make sure that this was factored in, included.
And it's a typical project, so I'll manage it and see it through. So.
And so the payback is 3 years, but the life
Just under
expectancy
3.
is,
18 to 20, there's some data out there that are saying in excess of 20 years, some of these bulbs can live. But, you think of the maintenance cost, you think of the disposal cost, year after year when we replace bulbs. It's,
no, that's what I was looking to try to do a little estimate of savings in future years in addition beyond the payback period.
sure,
So, thank you.
I think we can do that.
Okay. So now we're gonna go into your debt, the debt service. So this is a history of the district's bonding, going out to the market and borrowing. Now, typically, when you look at the Runlet renovation, the high school renovation, the miscellaneous projects, those 3, we used to bond through the city, where you would vote and then the city council would vote. When we did the Runlet HVAC project, the district started doing it on its own. So these have been the projects that we have done on our own, and we do work in tandem with the city in coordinating these things. We use the same financial advisor. We both keep the same updated financial information to provide to the rating agencies. We just had to do it recently because the city does it every year. They go out and borrow. But for us, we don't do it. Typically, we hadn't done it up that often until the last few years because of some of the significant projects. The other thing is with this is much cheaper to do. It's much more laborious, a lot more paperwork, a lot more public meetings and votes. but it is much more cost effective than doing what you may see in other towns, some type of lease, or when you get into energy, they call them ESCOs, where energy consignment, and those interest rates are significantly more than what we get on the bond rates. That's one of the big advantages you as a board and your authority are able to capitalize on, as you can see from the refunding that's been done. So I will move on to the trust fund. So for the trust fund, there's been a variety of different names that's been referred to depending on, as we get further and further away from people that were involved in this going back to 2005. You'll hear me refer to it as the Facilities and Renovation Trust Fund, which is the official title of it. Again, the board since 2005 has tried to maintain 5% of its general fund operating budget for debt, regardless of where its debt sits. And the purpose of that is so that we don't cause spikes in the tax rate when a significant project comes up. So you may have also heard it called the debt differential between what your actual debt is. So when you look here, the actual debt, okay, where 5% of the budget is 4.2 million. The actual debt is 2.8 million. So the difference between those two is a little over 1.4 million. That is the amount that we put in for a transfer, or about that. I have 1.4 even because we're playing, the bottom line keeps changing. Went before we gave it to you, and I hadn't adjusted it by 27,000. So either way, we'll fix it to make it all match by October. But the point is, what you're budgeting and what's everybody, it's like having a consistent car payment, and what your debt actually is, we take and vote to put that into a fund. And that fund right now is about 7.4, 7.5 million. With this deposit, you'll be at almost 9 million by June 30th, 2022. With this, once you pass the budget. And then what that fund's been used for is to offset any increases where the debt is above 5%, and that would impact the tax rate. So following the little graph, each year that goes by, budget goes one way and the debt goes another. And why is that? Because you might say, well, I have a mortgage and my payment's the same for 15, 30, 20 years. We have the ability to do that. They call it equal principal method for bonding. We don't do that. We do what's called equal principal. It's where you pay more interest up front, but less interest overall. Probably if you look at a 30-year debt schedule, you look at what you borrow and what you pay at the end, it's double. The reason we do that is so we can have this in place. If we had equal payment, there would never be any savings every year that we could put away. That's the whole reason why we do this. It is a more aggressive, more conservative method, and it allows us to let projects overlay and have savings each year to be able to put away to save for a big one. So what gets used in that calculation? The debt that I use is long-term debt. So the steam to gas project is 20 plus years for that payback. That was a 20-year bond. The elementary was a 30-year bond, and the HVAC was a 15-year. Those two were the original debts that I started with, that I offset. So I'm not double counting. I subtract out those to come up, and all the rebates and everything and building aid to come down to the number that says this is what 5% of the budget is. What we don't use, I don't use any leases. Like if it's technology or Canon or buses, we don't factor that in because to us, that's operating debt, not capital debt. And we didn't use the roof project from 2018 because that was leftover money from the steam to gas that we prioritized. And then for the CHS roofs, we only bonded those for 10 years. So I didn't factor those because I looked at that as a maintenance item. And that's how I come up with that differential and how you're putting that money away this year.
So how much debt do we have outstanding, short and long, And do we have two categories of debt, a short and long term?
Yeah, I look at
Debt.
I look at the bond debt separate from a lease, because when the
Okay.
lease is done, it just capitalizes. So I think it's about 53 million. And I think our cap is 195 million. It's 3% of valuation. I think that's the number. It might be a little high, and it could be higher, but I think that's what it is. So we're well below the cap for debt to be able to borrow. And I should have put the quote in here from S&P, because they said everything is managed very well right now, and that is one of the reasons for the high rating that we got. Okay. So for future discussion, one of the things we're proposing, and I spoke with the Chair of Capital Facilities, Danielle, I spoke with Chair of Finance, Pam, and what we're proposing to do is cancel the work session number 8, which was to be an open session. This is after you've posted your budget anyway. We didn't want to intermix this with before you're posting. We want you to get your budget stuff, at least the posting part, out of the way. And then have an open session of the Joint Capital Facilities and Finance Committee meeting on March 8th to discuss the run planning session.
That's a great idea.
All right, so you can at least get some groundwork there and see. We figure we'll put an agenda together, but some of the things we're talking about is the timeline. What are the things that have been happening since 2017, 2016, I want to say. All those reports, those items have been done. Tomorrow I will be getting an updated debt schedule as if we did this project, and I will be able to show you what those payments would be based on certain projections. And you'll be able to see, and for those board members that have been here, have seen that, I could show you that if I started applying your 9 million now, how I would offset those spikes to keep the tax rate flat or lower than what it would be. It also shows you, if you get building aid, what's it look like? Without building aid, what's it look like? If we take on more debt, say we went and borrowed money to do HVAC units. And the other piece we're going to do is try to overlay into that runlet repairs. Money that you're going to have to get ready to start spending regardless. So when you start looking at that net difference, you know, it's almost like when you go out shopping for a car. If I pay this little extra, maybe I'll get now a sunroof. You know, that's the kind of thing to start showing what's the reality, because it isn't as if there's nothing that is going to be done in the next 5 years with runlet. Something's going to have to be done, as we talk about roofs and other things.
And I think you guys saw that when we did the tour.
All right. So again, that's going to be March 8th. We'll show you an updated schedule. The information, we're working on getting all that posted and information to you. We will update the online schedule, board members' contact information. I have created each of the Zoom links for each of the public hearings. So I'll send that to the webmaster and have them start that rotation tomorrow on the banner, and we'll get those posted out there. I think the important thing to note is that at Millbrook, we cannot do live feeds. So that will be a recorded meeting. I spoke with Josh, and he will play that meeting starting the next day. If board members want to come in remote, we won't have the same capability as we normally have here. I'm not going to have a sound system to broadcast. This is all there would be. So it would be very difficult to have a Zoom meeting at that for something like that, just so you're aware. Now, when we go back to the high school, we have all the same features here up there, but there's no live feed at Millbrook. But that'll be in the multi-purpose room, high school auditorium for the second hearing, and then back here to vote on the budget on the 24th. We do have an open session that Monday, or sorry, let me move on to the revised schedule. We do have an open session the 22nd there that shows, in between. So you do have time to debate whatever you may hear from the public. As you see on the schedule, what you see in blue are some proposed changes. With March 1st going up to the high school and doing the meetings back to back rather than having one here and then moving up to the high school. On the 3rd, we would look to have a discussion on the SRO. That was already an open work session, by the way, but we would make that your SRO discussion. And then that's the night we need you to post a budget in order to meet the rest of this, these deadlines. Because I have to have 10 days from posting to public hearing.
Can you explain what posting means in terms of our process?
Yep. So when you have a budget that you want to post, that means we put that out there for the public. And as of right now, that is the budget you intend to have them comment on. And that's all that is. That
But
isn't a
it's not
budget.
necessarily the final.
No, you're,
No, it's a tentative budget.
you get 2 shots at it. The first one is you pass a preliminary budget on the 24th, that Wednesday. And then in October, you have the ability to touch the budget again. And which is what we've done ever since I've been here, and I don't know how long it's been going on before I was here. So it's something that is rare that you have the ability to do. But all that is posting for public discussion the budget that you are contemplating on passing.
And in the past, we have made sometimes significant changes between what was posted and what was actually final passed. Sometimes minor changes, but we have the ability to, when we discuss the budget and after public hearings, to make changes to that budget. The one that we are pretty much bound by will be the March 24th vote, which will finalize the budget. And then, as Jack said, when tax valuations and things come through and all in October, we actually can make some adjustments to that budget. The budget on March 24th will require a majority or 5 votes to pass. To adjust the budget in October requires 7 votes to pass or to make changes. So, Jack, I covered pretty much all that, right?
Yep. The only thing we did do that was, and we've done it in the past, not as, it's rare, but we touched the budget in June because of the significant amount of money that was left over. That's where we put it into the trust funds. We revisited with you in August, just so you knew what happened, because that's what we did. You gave the authority an up to amount. We adjusted, moved the money, revisited again. And then in October, we finalized everything. It was a much easier doing it that way than doing everything that night. But it definitely was a stepping stone. I do see that we may be potentially doing something like that or proposing to do that something right now, just trying to keep things stable. And we will be in contact with the city as well, because their budget process is underway. So if it's something that we need to do or plan for based on what they do, we will keep those conversations going and then present those changes or adjustments or why we should put more money away or do what we need to do throughout this process. Obviously, the October is once the tax rate's set and the bills go out, we're done. We can't do anything. So we're dependent on whatever you have in savings and what's in this budget. That's why managing this right now through this whole COVID situation will be critical.
Can I ask a logistical question? If we're so lacking in our ability to have a live meeting and people's, live feed and such, I know that we go to Millbrook because it includes the east side of the city, but if our east side location doesn't allow, I'm just sort of throwing it out there. Would it make sense to just be in the same place twice to offer? I mean, I suppose anyone on either side of the city could attend the CHS one and it's, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. It just concerns me a little bit. Just our ability to make sure everyone has the same access. If somebody can only come to the Millbrook night, they can't, I don't know.
I think it's important to note that both meetings are exactly the same. We present both sides. We just do both sides, but it's something we've talked about here, struggling with. We go to have a meeting and then we're saying, okay, you're gonna do live feeds from here and here. What if we host it over here? Just so we know we can't do certain things. So that's all, but it's completely up to you.
I'm supportive either, I guess I'm supportive either way, but it just comes to mind that if
It's
somebody
early.
can only come on the one night, it doesn't matter that it's the same, that the one night they can participate, they can't because.
Yeah, we've in the past done it in 2 locations for physical access, that people can walk into the meeting. They don't have to drive all the way across town, that it's in their neighborhood, more or less. But it is, up to us. We have the authority to host the meeting wherever we like. And if we would like to give 2 opportunities for phone in or Zoom in type of comments, then we could do both of them at the high school. But if we wanted to keep it to where, some of the people in the Heights who walk and or don't have the ability to come in and participate normally, this gives them another opportunity. But it's open for discussion. What are anybody's thoughts?
What would be the limitations, given COVID-19? Are there like specific numbers of people that we'd allow at Millbrook?
There would be a limitation. That room that we have been in before would probably hold 30 people, I'm guessing, maybe a little more.
Including
Just
us?
what-
We could-
Matt,
we could-
how's your
We got the
better at
measuring
this than I.
stick, so we can, it's about right. We held, or we didn't hold it, but renters held church services up there with 6-foot distancing, so it sounds about right. Maybe a little bit more than that.
No more than 30 people.
And that would include us
That would
in the
include
30, or us and then 30 more?
At Millbrook, it would be easy. I could separate everyone out up front by 6 feet, all the board members and administrators, and then we could put seating in such a way that we could
What's
go.
your history up there? How many people come? What's your
Well,
precedent
for budget wise,
for budget, not for anything else?
I guess, and I guess we can go back and look at that. I would say budget wise, it's typically 10, 15 at most that come up there, which is typically about 5 to 10 more than come to the one that's in downtown. There's
Usually
actually
it's-
more people have come up there than they have downtown. It depends on the issues, of course, and what our posted budget will look like will certainly affect how many people come for those. But usually we don't have a tremendous amount of
Sure.
input on that. During the time where we held some of our public hearing and public speaking sessions with regards to the Howie the Young situation, we were, SRO in that location, and that was not with spacing, so it'll depend on the.
Yep.
I don't see anything here that would be at this time drive a ton of people in at this point, but you never know. It's the right of people to participate.
Sure.
I think the one issue that may drive some attendance is SRO.
It may,
So
whether we budget an SRO or not may drive some attendance.
either way.
Although I would expect both sides of that would attend
Yeah.
pretty strongly.
I guess my concern too is the Heights has a disproportionate number of senior citizens. Not that a lot of our senior citizens come necessarily, but
Mhm.
those are people that would have to come in person if they wanted to speak on that evening.
They would have to come in person. And also, we have some of our newer families that have moved into Concord and come to that particular meeting. and
Right.
Physically come to that meeting, so. But right now, it's the administration has scheduled it as Millbrook for one night and CHS for another, with only the CHS having, a Zoom capability. Does anyone want to change that? Because we can certainly tell them. Or do we want to talk about that at our next meeting and invite anyone who happens to be listening in here now to provide their input?
Yeah, maybe some input would be good. It just
I don't
came to
know.
mind, that's all.
I mean-
I don't feel super strongly either way, but some people might, and I don't
Yeah,
want
this is what is currently scheduled, but anyone can make a motion for us to relocate that meeting.
to. No, let me.
But I'm not seeing a lot of people jumping on that right now. so
No.
maybe-
I just don't think that
later.
we should. I think we should offer the physical location at Millbrook. So.
Okay, we can, we have some time, and we are meeting pretty frequently over the next week or so we can revisit this again if anybody wants to propose changing that meeting site.
So just a quick reminder, next week you have, on Monday, you'll have, we'll be meeting to talk about student services. We have an executive committee at 5 Jim, and then followed by the presentation, the budget presentation on student services.
Mhm.
Then on Wednesday, there will be a meeting with negotiations committee at 5, followed by the budget presentation on curriculum and technology on Wednesday. That's next week. I'm tentatively, because I'm working out the dates with a lot of folks, but we're looking at the March 3rd date. Did you plug that in, Jack, for the SRO?
Yes, that's what's
So-
in blue and bold.
So what we were thinking about, since that's an important topic to discuss,
Mhm.
that we would have an opportunity to do like a forum. We would do a presentation, we would talk about the role and the data, all the data that is in around the SRO. And then invite the community. We'll get the, information out to the community and invite the community in to give input and hear from our families and our students. And that evening, I think that will help you with the decision around that particular budget item. So
And
Does
that
that
would
work?
be at the
Is
high
that-
school auditorium.
that would,
so
that would be at the high school,
open
and we
for
would
Zoom.
do the same thing. We would use Zoom, and we would also, be able to, if people Zoom in,
Yep.
we'd be able to, they can ask questions, or they can come in on their phones, which some people do, and we check with them to make sure that their voices are heard. How does that sound?
Go ahead, Ms. West, go ahead.
I'm concerned that the vote on the budget is that's that same night of that conversation, because there's not time to really sleep on it, so to speak.
But that would be the budget to post, so that is not, we're
Yeah.
certainly, there will be additions or subtractions from the budget after that as well.
We're just giving people time to put something out there. You still have plenty of time with that budget. It just gives the community a certain amount of time to see what's in it. And so when they come to the meetings, they can ask questions, because you could hear input at your open sessions or your hearings, which would cause you to change your mind. You might say, I want to add X amount to the budget, or I want to subtract X amount. So posting is nothing more than giving them an idea what you're using as a budget.
That the decision of whether or not the SRO would be included, though, would still at that point, in effect, need to be made for that to be posted, though. I mean,
It's not a budget decision though.
So-
It's
Okay.
like if there's no SRO, then the salary would disappear. So it's not contingent on the budget. I see your concern, but it's two separate things. Deciding to keep or get rid of an SRO because of money would be a much different issue than this. So we'll take all that information and we have time to discuss it. And if we decide, you know what, you're right, we should eliminate that from the budget, it just disappears. It doesn't. So it's so that we have time to do that between the 3rd and the public hearings and October, all of, it's not contingent on the money or the budget. Does that make sense?
So I believe what Ms. Higgins is saying is that we would, if you put that in there and we budgeted it as it is now and it stayed in the budget, it would remain in the budget. There are people, I tell you, I can pretty confidently say right now, whether we put it in the budget we post or take it out of the budget report post, at the public hearings, we will get comments and recommendations to go the other way from numerous people, right? It's going to be, some people are going to say we posted it and we included it and they're going to be upset with that and they want our final budget to remove it. Some people will say that we didn't put it in the budget and they want it in that budget, and they would be testifying that they want us to put it in on March 24th. Regardless, what I believe Barb is saying, and Ms. Higgins and Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we put in, $48,000 for an SRO or whatever the number happens to be, I'm just making that number up right now, but X number of $1,000s into the budget at any time, even if we pass the budget, we can direct the administration to terminate or eliminate that position. the money that would be budgeted for it would then either need to be reallocated, or it would just be excess for us at the end of the year that would go back into lowering the tax rate after the October meeting, if we didn't do something with that.
Gina has-
So, yes, Miss, I'm sorry, Gina.
You can't see me,
You have
that's
to see
okay.
it while we're down there, you're far.
So for what it's worth for people who, this is their first budget rodeo. And rodeo, I mean rodeo. Last year, I didn't get it. This year, I'm only sort of 75% of the way there. But posting it simply is publicizing, this is our working budget.
Yeah.
We're not locking ourselves in to anything at that point. We're saying, general public, this is our working budget. If you agree, if you disagree, you need to come forward and tell us. You need to come and give your input. This is not, it's not even cast in gravel, much less cast in stone. Think of it kind of like in sand at the beach. It can be washed away, we can add it, we can change it, we can do whatever, but this is simply to let the public know what it is we're thinking at this point. Does that help with the concept of what it means when we post a
Because
budget?
it's 2 weeks before our first hearing, so that's, in my mind, a good amount of time to share it and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think what Ms. West is saying is that may not be enough time to say what we're thinking if that budget is our thinking. And, I think the decision on SRO is not just, is it in or is it out? Is it resources in other ways and things like that, which I think I share some of that feels like I don't want to vote on the budget that night either, if that's when we're having that discussion. It feels like it's the most controversial item in the budget right now. I'll probably learn differently once we get to a budget hearing. And that, to have the discussion and have a yes or no decision on the whole budget that evening seems a lot.
Can I speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, I think it's important that the public's voice gets heard around the SRO thing. It's not only as we know, a local thing, it's a national thing. And of great concern to a lot of people, and it's a very divisive issue. It's, I don't need to tell you why, because you're all well-read and educated, but any way we sort of minimize that discussion just will feed the idea that we're not listening or paying attention to the public. I can see where it would be challenging to to pass a budget at the same time we're talking about a controversial subject. So I don't have a solution, but I think someone that's concerned about what the community are voiced within the community, I think this is something we need to address, and I'm not sure how, but it's serious.
My thoughts go back to full day kindergarten.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we had already passed the budget this time of year. And then that whole group came, we had the summer stuff. And it was in the fall budget meeting, when we found out we were gonna lose our Concord steam. It was after we had this spring vote. It was a huge thing. We have tons of people sitting here. We hadn't budgeted for full day K. So we voted to keep the budget the same, which meant we were holding off on full day K for another year. That was a hugely controversial spring, summer, and fall in our city, people on both sides. But I guess my point is the decision was made after we passed this budget. So I'm not sure how to balance this particular situation out so people feel heard.
Barb, that's a really good point. And
It's just,
I think it may be that we just have to be really good educators at this meeting and explain to people that they can continue to voice their opinions. We're not making any decisions now about whether or not that job will be in place or not. It's not contingent on what we're doing that night with regard to the budget. I mean, so, because you're right, and I was part of that audience with the full day kindergarten too. So I think you bring up a good point, and I think as long as we educate the public around that, I think we have an honest and fair reason for moving forward with the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Ms. Walsh and then Ms. Smith.
And this may not work because I realize we have a full school board meeting after that, but can we flip the discussions of the 3rd and the 1st so that we can hear the information about the SRO on Monday and then do revenues, transfers, and the decision to post on the Wednesday, so there's at least a little bit of time to digest?
There is that opportunity. You certainly could do that. Ms. Smith?
I was just gonna propose something similar if we could swap the discussion to a different day. Still do the vote to post on the 3rd, but do the SRO on, say, the 10th and give it its own day.
Fine. We can do that. The other thing I want to point out is the money we're talking about, let's get some facts here. This is not going to impact the budget hardly at all. This is going to be such a small impact so that we can pass this budget, whether it's in or it's out, and in May, make a completely different decision, and it will not impact our budget. We would have the finances to be able to do that. So the thing I want to make sure is that everyone who wants to be heard on this issue is heard. Because I think that's very important. As Dave said, this is a big community issue. This is something there'll be a lot of questions on. And I can easily see that after an evening of testimony and input, that we may come back with, 5 or 10 questions that we want clarification on before we resolve the issue. So the one thing I will point out is that on March the 24th, we have to pass a budget. So whatever we juggle around with regards to the scheduling is certainly within our scheduled capability and our ability to do that, but we will have to, just keep in mind, we have to post it by that date, or we have to actually pass the budget by that date. But Mr. Dunn, maybe or maybe Superintendent, you can tell what impact on the budget does the SRO have? What financial impact?
$88,000.
88,000?
88,000 and some change. That's our portion.
So it's an 88,000. So it's not an insignificant amount, but it is something that could be in. But I want to make sure we have time for everybody to speak. I would tend to agree that having it on the 3rd and then posting the budget
Yeah, send them.
is going to be a very, very long meeting, I believe.
Can we put it on the 1st and allow people to speak put it at the beginning? So if people do come, they're allowed to speak first and then go about our other stuff? Because it is well, we can't do it until 7, right? Because that's
Right.
when.
But you have a school board meeting on March 1st, and
Right.
and if you do that, the forum hearing, whatever you want to call it, on the SRO, I think that will be a very long day and night because you'll start it early and I wouldn't put the two of them together.
I get it. I don't have a solution.
Well, the other alternative would be to post the budget either inclusive or exclusive of it. That would be a normal vote, and then have the hearing, have the meeting after the budget is posted, and then make modifications prior to, discuss it on either the 8th or whatever, and make those modifications to the budget based on what we decide from our, public input. We have all those options.
Is March 3rd a legal deadline for budget posting? Is it the number of days prior to a
Your
hearing?
charter says I have to do it 10 days prior to the first public hearing. So if I move it, it cascades everything.
Right.
So the guardrails that I'm trying to work within,
Yeah.
April 15th, we need to start issuing professional contracts. The issue is you move that deadline. The person that issues those contracts, which is one person, has to start getting all this stuff together. And it's not just hit one button and it processes everything. So I just want to make sure respectful of her time. We have that. And then the only other thing is we would need to let the city know as in their budget process, whether they need to expect that revenue from us for their position. That's really the only piece that they would ask of us. That's all.
So Go ahead, Ms. West, and then Ms. Gannon.
I just think, but you just said that we could potentially omit the decision on the third, just. Is
You
that
would
it?
choose to post a budget that either had that amount of money budgeted into it in whatever area that is. I don't know if that's in contracts or whatever. And then, you know, depending on what you wanted, or you could leave it without that in it and post the budget without that in it. It's a draft. It's like a draft, right? And then at any one of those meetings, we can have a discussion and say, I'd like to re-add this $88,000 into the budget, or say, I would like to remove this $88,000 from the budget. You know, the posted budget is just the target where we discuss. We want it to be as, and correct me if I'm wrong, we want it to be as close as we can, because we don't want to be discussing millions of little things or hundreds of little items that we want to take out. And sometimes we've gotten into that discussion on March 22nd and taken out $1,000 in copier money and put it in someplace else. There are sometimes members that want to address some specific items, but I would think this one would be one that we would all discuss pretty extensively. Ms. Gannon.
Okay, so before I thought I understood that it was the issue of not understanding that posting is not actually approving the budget, but I think what I understand Ms. West to say, correct me if I'm wrong, that doing that, posting a budget, whether we have it in or have it out, comes across, the optics of it are that we are completely toned down to what the community wants. It's not a practical matter, it's a sort of an optics matter. That it sounds like we've already made up our mind, and then we're just sort of giving lip service to let people come in and say what they're going to say, but we've already decided. I'm not saying that's actual, but that's the perception. So, and I hate to do this, what if we add the SRO thing on the second?
Or could we change?
Tuesday.
Right. Oh. Yeah.
If you could, it's us. We can choose to meet more often than we already are meeting. It's just our decision.
Because that's gonna be a long night. Why would we want to tie that into something else?
We,
But could we just flip, like, could we move the SRO to the 10th? And
What's the
move
10th?
the CHS, CRTC enrollment to the day that we post the budget?
I don't believe we'll have CRTC and that
Oh, yeah.
enrollment data. That's why
Sorry.
it's so late already.
Yeah,
Try to make it.
we've already posted the budget. I think people
Sure.
kind of want, we'll have
That's
already
after the
posted the budget at that point, so that will come across as.
I see what you're
toned down.
saying. Yeah,
It doesn't fix what she's.
I see what you're saying.
But the problem with March the 1st is that we are now limiting people to talk to us about that particular topic.
Oh,
the
no, I
SRO,
meant
for
the second,
1
Jim.
hour and a half. That's not going to work.
The second,
What about the fiscal discussion?
We could do it on the 15th. Well, those are our public hearings, so we would have to move the public hearing.
I was going into February.
Oh, February 17th?
Swapping something out.
I think it's everybody being prepared to present that and what the SRO does, having all the cases. I know they've started that work, but considering the break's getting ready to come up, they're getting the kids, moving along with the high school, have them come back February 1st. I would say they need the time. Let me throw another caveat into this. So we authorized for some safety concerns at the high school in the auditorium, replacement of equipment on the stage, trusses, motors, variety of things. That's to happen that week. I am now taking 2 days off of them. I had to call them and say, those are not available now. And they bump things to move us up to get this done. If I move to the second, now I have to wipe out 3 days. And they're already wiping out the kids on things. So I'm getting concerned that I'm wiping out that week for them. Just because it's something that really needs to be done in the building. And once they start, they're going all day. If it takes them to 11 o'clock that night, they're gonna start at 8:30 and just go. That's what they've told us. So we just need to make sure we have the days available. And today I did tell them, it looks like now the 3rd is not available. So I'm just trying to be cognizant of that safety issue that we need to get fixed.
Fine.
versus,
that does spark
Yeah.
an idea. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm the one.
I'm sorry. What if in order to allow the community to weigh in one way or the other, we pull it out of the posted budget?
Here's what I was gonna suggest. Right? No, here's what I was gonna suggest as kind of looking at a compromise that leaves this decision to a time when we can associate it. And we have money in there for a safety system in Runlet, which would be a card thing. There's money in there for other safety. Well, I don't think you're going to get an argument from this board that we should invest more money into our safety systems, and that if that's the budget we want to get behind, that's fine. We can put the money in there, have the hearing. If the hearing suggests that convinces us that we want an SRO, we take that money out of that and make an SRO. If the hearing convinces us that we don't want to have an SRO, we take that money and put it into a different safety or support system. Is that something that doesn't support the SRO in an optical version, as Ms. Gannon said? Or because I think there's I've heard from numerous parents who are concerned that eliminating an SRO sends a big signal that we don't care about student safety as well. So I don't want to create an optic either way until we hear from our constituents. Gina?
Yeah, I
Brenda?
like that least,
Okay,
because it seems like we're then hiding it in a line item for something else.
okay.
And I think that's worse than simply saying, look, we've included it for now, we can always eliminate it, or to say we've eliminated it for now, we can always add it back in.
Mhm.
But to put it in something else and then call it something else and then pull it back, I will not support doing that.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Parker, Ms. Hastings, Ms. Walsh, and Mr. Weinberg, in that order, please.
Oh, okay, well, thank you. I think we also need to appreciate the fact that the police department went through a long application process to select this SRO. And if, you know, in other words, we have to think about the particular SRO that's there already, that's there now. How, you know, is he going to have a job or not? To put him in that sort of tenuous position, we need to at least say that it's funded unless we decide it's not, maybe. I mean, I think we do have to consider the perspective of that position and who's in it and how that impacts on them. They're an employee. So,
Dave, I had a chance to talk to Chief Osgood about that. And when I meet with, as you know, I meet with him quarterly. And he asked me about it. And he was interested in knowing what the position of the board was. And I said, well, the board recognized that it was an issue that they had to discuss as it related to their budget. He wanted to know as soon as possible because he has X amount of vacancies available in his department. And so he doesn't want to fill those knowing that he has an officer at the high school that he needs to take care of. So I indicated to him that we would be working on this month, February, and would have a decision along the way. So he's got two vacancies. I think he told me it was 2 right now, but and he's filled all his others and would like to be able to know what to do. So he wouldn't,
right.
if he needed to, he would bring that person back into the force.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I worked with the current SRO, so, you know, just to know that.
No?
I'll pass.
Okay.
I pass.
Okay, Ms. Walsh?
I like your suggestion, although not in safety, because I think the debate in the community is not necessarily whether it's something, is it an SRO or is it counselors or is it something else? So is there another line we can create that is sort of targeted toward it will be something that, you know, that we're going to use this money, but I like sort of not putting off the decision until we've gotten a chance to hear from the community, but sort of saying this money is either for an SRO or counselors or a combination thereof, but that's more of it. In the state budget, you can do footnotes and say it's for that.
Well, as we said, this posted budget is a draft budget, so we can move money from one area all the way over to another area. Mr. Dunn, do you have a suggestion that would accomplish that?
Yeah, so what if we tried to do this? What if I punt on you posting the budget till the 8th? We would cancel that joint facilities finance committee meeting. The 3rd can be your SRO discussion. You would have your public hearings on the 22nd and 24th. I'll just cascade down. And then on the 3rd, there'll be an open meeting on the 29th, which is a Monday, and we passed it's the 30th, March 31st, we would pass your budget. That's a Wednesday.
So if we chose that calendar, passing on the 31st would be still, is that going to be doable?
We've
for
done
your
it
end on that?
before. It's just,
I know.
it's telling them time, and I'm going to get a little bit more feeling as we get into there. And if we post the budget, what I can at least tell her to do is start the professional contracts, because it's likely you're going to not make much in the way of changes. I'm going to anticipate that say the professional staff.
Okay.
I mean, so far there hasn't been anything that's come up besides those reductions, but at least if we're narrowed down to that, that's an easy thing. But tell her this budget's likely to pass with the staffing as we've presented. Let's start those contracts so that she's at least ahead of it, because she's going to lose a whole week.
Right.
But if I can at least tell her, go ahead and start that, then that's fine. We have passed as late as that, but I know the big thing is then it only gives us 2 weeks to get those contracts out. That's all.
Well, if that's a workable solution,
We
I
can-
appreciate that.
Yeah, we can do that. So if we have
What
more
are-
discussion.
What are anyone's thoughts on that particular proposal?
Could you just repeat what we are
Yeah.
proposing?
Yeah, so I was going to take it down, pause for station identification and move it off and say it. But I guess I can't do that in public television. Huh? So what we would do is move you'll still have this meeting on the 1st. The 3rd becomes the SRO discussion, and the budget, the post goes to the 8th. Then the enrollments meeting would still be here, because remember, this was an open meeting anyway, and then we went and filled it. This would still happen. This would be an open week, or we move the joint finance facility somewhere into here. We'll have to just double check that. And then these public hearings become the 22nd and 24th, an open session on the 29th, which is a Monday. You'll do this on the 31st. So does that sound right? I'm gonna pull it off the screen for a minute so that I can try to type it up. Sorry, David. And then this way it's clear, and we'll send it out to you, but go ahead and conjure up your ideas.
So Jack, if we push the posting from the 3rd to the 8th,
yeah,
that just adds 5 days onto our public hearings?
Correct.
You could actually do the 17th and the 22nd, correct?
I have
Public hearings.
well, no, 10 days from the 8th. That's only, it's 10 days.
Okay.
I'm at the 18th, so I miss it by a day. That's
All
why
right.
I gotta- Okay. Oops.
Can we not have it on Thursday?
Yeah, I was just trying to keep consistency.
Yeah,
that's
I get
all.
it.
So we bring back work session 8. And then the SRO discussion would be work session 7.
Was there a specific reason in addition to that they were going to post the budget? Did we reach out to any outside groups, both for and against, who were definitely going to come and discuss that?
It had to do with when we have to vote for it and then backdating the number of days that we have to.
Okay, so we didn't reach out to any groups.
Reach out to who? For what?
Just any, whether it's each department.
Oh, for the
whether it's
SRO.
advocacy
Oh,
groups.
and you mean on the SRO issue? Not
Oh.
yet. We wanted to establish a date first. I
Yeah.
I didn't have much to say until I knew that this was something that you wanted to do. I mean, it's been on the important topic.
Hold on a second.
While Jack is typing, did anyone else have any other questions or comments?
I guess I want to know, do we have like an advertising plan for it? Or like, I don't know if that's like a special program.
You mean for the forum, for the
Yeah.
hearing? No, I'll do the traditional, get the information out. I'll write a press release. I'll put it out to the papers. I'll post it on our website. I'll do my letters to parents. I'll do it all like that. I don't know other than what advocacy groups you were referring to. I do know that Change Concord has been interested in it. Other than that, I know Chief is interested in the sense of how he handles his employee, because it's his employee. So, and then there's families and parents out in the district, I assume, that have an interest in this. So. Is that, yeah, okay, yeah. Pretty much what we normally do.
And my greatest concern is to make sure we have enough time that everybody who wants to say something has the opportunity to say something for us to do.
Jim?
Yes, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, we seem to be waiting for everyone else to weigh in on this SRO position. Is that something we should be discussing as a board as well? Because I think there's many sides to this issue. And, maybe we need to weigh in ourselves on what we feel about this. I'm not sure we're all either in support or all not in support. But at what point can we discuss this as a board?
It's an excellent point, Mr. Parker, that we need to discuss it. I was anticipating that would be a discussion we would have after the public input and the opportunity for the board to, I would expect the opportunity to ask questions of anybody, whether it's the police chief or if it's anyone that happens to be sitting in the that is making a statement or a position that was weighing in on that we would be able to ask them questions as well and then make our decision after. But we can discuss this as a topic at any time we schedule a board meeting.
I think that's fine after we hear the public. I mean, it is important we get their input. But I do think it's something that we may want to, give time at least for us to discuss as a board. I'm not sure how much, public input we're going to have either. So, thank you.
No, that's a good point, Mr. Parker. There is not a lot of public input on that particular date. We may be able to, as a board, discuss it afterwards. If there is a very long session of public input, we would not stay till 2 in the morning, I believe. We would defer that discussion to a later time. So,
Good.
Thank you.
Clear heads prevail.
Almost done.
Come at me, watching you juggle all.
All right, let's see if I can get this up and then shared with David. If I have this right. All right, let's see. Let me just share this. You can go ahead and look at it. I just want to make sure I have this shared for Dave. Oops. Does that make sense now? Is that better? So I've so it's, if I step down here, we have the SRO discussion on the 3rd. The 8th would be an open session, but that's the night you're gonna post your budget unless there's more discussion. As of right now, that is, it's the central office. Okay, to be in this room. Then you have the enrollments on Wednesday. This would be an open work session. And what I mean by, when I say open session, it means that there's topics. Other than that, there's no meeting to be held, but I gotta get them posted so people have anticipation, and as soon as there's something. We would not have any work session here. That would be, that Wednesday, we would do the Joint Finance Facilities Committee meeting, talk about Runlet planning. We do the 2 public hearings, Millbrook 7, 5:30 Concord High School. Then that Monday, your open sessions at March 29th, and then you'd vote on the budget on Wednesday, the 31st. Does that help?
Thank you, Jack. That works very well for me. What about any other the board members?
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, thank you.
Once again, we thank Jack.
Now, as far as the location, you're good with each of those. I mean, as I said, we'll post here. They'll all be at central office for the rest of the budget hearings, except the public hearing. All right. And then this, yeah, this is gonna be up there. I'm just trying to make sure while we are all here. SRO would be up there. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that covers it.
The SRO discussion would be a public hearing type of session that would be
Yeah.
able to take both in person as well as Zoom.
So what we'll do is I'll
correct?
note that the public hearing has been added to that work session.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, I can do that.
Jack, with that, March 15th, that would be a 5:30.
Yeah.
open
oh, yep,
session.
Yeah, sorry. I'll fix it. I don't.
Yeah, just check.
Yeah, but I gotta be careful. I will fix that and we'll send you a new schedule and we'll get the website fixed as well. If you're good with that.
Jack, you may want to update the attendance matrix as well.
It's true. Yep, I will do that.
Just add that to the.
It's all right. I'll do it tonight.
Yeah, you're not allowed to sleep. You just have to update everything.
That's right. That's why I got this leash.
Are we comfortable, and does anybody have input on the fact that our public hearing without Zoom is at 7 PM and our public hearing with Zoom is at 5:30?
It just hasn't changed.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That's why Danielle just asked.
Oh,
the same
okay, so
question.
that's like, that's just a swap in there, but we would
This-
have then 5:30 at the Millbrook School and 7 PM at the high school?
No, they're actually advertised for 7 o'clock right now.
Yeah,
Do you want to change that?
No, I
No?
just
Okay.
wanna, I was
That's-
just saying, is everyone comfortable with that, and does that feel like an opportune time to have 5:30 or 7, whichever, or 6? I was just seeing if there's any input to maximize our public accessibility.
I think 7 more people can come because they're done with dinner, they're home from work, their kids
Okay.
are fed. that kind of
So
thing.
7 o'clock for both those meetings is acceptable?
Would it make sense to go to 6 if it's, we're thinking it's going to be a long?
No, it's the budget.
I don't think
Oh, the budget, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the public hearings for the budget would be, are going to be particularly long. I just want to make them accessible to the most number of people. The 5:30 SRO discussion at McCullough certainly is one we could either make at 6 or we could leave it at 5:30. Okay. Ms. Cannon.
I'd like to suggest that we make it at 5:30. I think it is going to be a very long meeting and people who can't be there right away are welcome to come in as soon as they can get there. The SRO meeting.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that one will be.
Right. So we might as well get started.
All right, so
Does anybody have any issues with this proposed schedule?
I think it provides, it's a good balance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dunn and Superintendent, for getting together to come up with that.
So this is gonna be 5:30, just so you know, I
Yeah.
shouldn't fix it. Danielle would spot that one, so. But that's at 7, that's 5:30, everything else is good.
I thought that I didn't know that, I was gonna say is, I thought that I was told that the high school one would be 7 PM as well. Doesn't.
We gotta fix that.
Yeah, both 7. I'm gonna do it now.
so everybody's-
Sorry, David, it's gonna kick you off again and then I'll share it. I just want to make sure we're clear when we leave here that that's set up where. So 7 will be both of them. And I'll-
Jeff will send that out tomorrow morning.
Yep.
To everybody,
Yep.
so they have it.
I'll
and
be
you can
typed
put
up.
it
I'll
in
get
your
everything
calendars.
prepped. Let me put
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and then
you've been over it 100 times.
that right now?
I think that looks pretty good. Let me check on one thing.
I'm gonna add a Zoom link to this. And a Zoom link for Concord High, which I've created those. I'm trying to think that I do. I actually did create it for Millbrook, but it's probably gonna be pointless. Because there's only gonna be one device. So this, I'll add the Zoom and I'll add the one for the SRO. All the rest of them won't be the broader Zoom link. Okay.
All right, thank you,
All right.
Mr. Dunn.
Great.
I think that'll work.
Awesome. Awesome.
Um, Very good. Does,
That's all we
Superintendent,
have.
do you have anything else? Mr. Dunn, are you set? Mr. Cashman, are you set? Thank you very much for your efforts in putting together the information that you brought in tonight. We appreciate it, and I know you are always available for questions. Should any board member have them? Does anybody else on the board have any questions, Mr. Weinberg?
Sorry, I didn't go back to this discussion today about properties. I was wondering about White's Farm. Is that something we own, or is that like an in-kind property that we pay taxes on, or that there's a fund that covers?
I believe that was a deeded property to us that has covenants connected to it. I have reached out to our former attorney who was involved in that, John Tegg, because he had a lot of that historical knowledge of it. And I do remember there was discussion when we were doing the elementary project about potentially using that land, because I think there's 23 acres there. But that's the history that I am digging back to 2010 that I remember. But that's my understanding. There's covenants. I think when you look at online, it does say Concord Union School District for us. So on the tax record.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Parker, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay, so without any other additional business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn is made by Ms. Higgins. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded by Ms. Hastings. This is a voice vote. All those, I don't know who said it. Voice in there first, but we can clarify that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.